Hello, beautiful souls. Before we begin today's episode, I want to say something important. If you haven't watched episode 1, Why Healing Alone Isn't Enough, I highly recommend watching it first on my YouTube video channel, because today's conversation builds directly on what we discussed there. In episode 1, we explored a difficult truth. Healing is important. But healing alone does not automatically create freedom. You can heal your wounds and still feel trapped. You can understand your patterns and still feel stuck. You can spend years working on yourself and still wake up feeling like your life belongs to someone else. And that realization brings us to today's conversation, because once you understand that healing alone isn't enough, the next question becomes, so what do I actually do? And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. Because rebuilding your life isn't about becoming perfect. It isn't about fixing every wound. It isn't about reaching some magical state where you're completely healed before you are allowed to move forward. It's about creating structure. It's about building stability. It's about creating options. And most importantly, it's about rebuilding your life one pillar at a time. Today I'm going to share what I call the Rebuild Blueprint, the framework that helped me move from survival toward freedom. Not overnight, not perfectly, but consistently. The biggest myth about change. Most women try to change their lives through willpower. They tell themselves, tomorrow I'll be stronger. Tomorrow I'll have more confidence. Tomorrow I'll finally take action. But confidence rarely comes before action. Confidence usually comes after action. And that's why so many people feel stuck. They're waiting to feel ready. They're waiting to feel fearless. They're waiting to feel certain. Meanwhile, life keeps passing. The truth is, you do not need perfect psychology. You need structure. Because structure creates momentum. Momentum creates evidence. Evidence creates confidence. And confidence creates transformation. So let's walk through the 5 pillars. Pillar 1, safety. The first thing most women need isn't motivation. It's safety. Because when you've spent years in stress, years in conflict, years in uncertainty, your nervous system becomes exhausted. You start living in survival mode. Everything feels urgent. Everything feels dangerous. Everything feels overwhelming. And when you're constantly overwhelmed, building a new life feels impossible. This is why safety comes first. Not financial safety, not external safety, internal safety. Learning how to regulate your nervous system. Learning how to create emotional stability. Learning how to stop absorbing everyone else's chaos. Learning how to protect your energy. For me, this looked like creating boundaries, limiting conversations that drained me, spending less time explaining myself, spending more time listening to myself, because every time we abandon ourselves to keep others comfortable, we lose a little bit of our power. And rebuilding starts by reclaiming that power. Ask yourself, what is one thing I can do this week that makes me feel safer? Not happier, not stronger, safer. Start there. Pillar 2, skills. This pillar changed everything for me, because healing helped me understand my situation, but skills gave me options, and options create freedom. One of the biggest reasons people stay trapped is because they believe they have no alternatives. No alternatives financially, no alternatives professionally, no alternatives practically. But when you learn valuable skills, something shifts. You stop seeing dead ends. You start seeing possibilities. For me, digital skills became a turning point. Learning content creation, learning communication, learning sales, learning marketing, learning how the online world works. Not because I wanted to become an influencer, not because I wanted to become famous, but because I wanted choices. I wanted the ability to create income. I wanted the ability to work from everywhere, anywhere. I wanted the ability to build something that belonged to me. And here's what I want every woman listening to understand. A skill can change your future faster than motivation ever will. Because motivation fades, skills stay. Motivation disappears. Skills compound. Motivation is emotional. Skills are practical. If you're rebuilding your life right now, ask yourself, what skill could create more freedom for me over the next 12 months? Because the answer to that question might change everything. Pillar 3, income. This part makes some people uncomfortable, but it needs to be said. Income is not separate from healing. Income is part of healing because financial dependence often creates emotional dependence, and emotional dependence often keeps people stuck. Now, let me be very clear. Money does not solve every problem. Money does not create happiness. Money does not heal trauma. But money creates options, and options create freedom. Freedom to live unhealthy situations. Freedom to make different choices. Freedom to breathe. Freedom to think clearly. Freedom to stop making decisions based entirely on fear. One of the most empowering moments in my rebuilding journey wasn't emotional. It wasn't spiritual. It was practical. It was realizing that I could create income, that I wasn't powerless, that I wasn't trapped forever. And that's why I believe financial rebuilding belongs inside the healing conversation, not outside it. Because women deserve both healing and independence, growth and stability, peace and options. Not one or the other, both. Pillar 4, community. This pillar is often overlooked, but it matters more than most people realize because isolation keeps people stuck. When you're alone with your fears become louder. When you're alone with your doubts become bigger. When you're alone with your dreams, those dreams can start feeling unrealistic. That's why community matters, because healing happens in connection. Growth happens in connection. Courage grows in connection. I often say, many women don't stay because they want the relationship. They stay because they fear being alone. And I understand that fear deeply. But here's what changed my life. I stopped trying to rebuild in isolation. I started surrounding myself with people moving forward, people building, people learning, people growing, people creating possibilities. And their belief became borrowed confidence until I found my own. Never underestimate the power of being in the right room. The right room can change the trajectory of your life. Pillar 5, identity. This might be the most important pillar of all, because eventually rebuilding becomes less about what you are living and more about who you are becoming. Many women know exactly what they don't want. They don't want the stress. They don't want the conflict. They don't want the fear. but they haven't yet created a vision for who they want to become. And without a vision, it's hard to move forward because your brain naturally moves toward identity, not goals, identity. Think about it. A woman who sees herself as powerless behaves differently than a woman who sees herself as capable. A woman who sees herself as trapped behaves differently than a woman who sees herself as resourceful. A woman who sees herself as broken behaves differently than a woman who sees herself as rebuilding. The story you tell yourself matters. So, let me ask you, who are you becoming? Not who were you, not who hurt you, not who left you, not who disappointed you. Who are you becoming? Because rebuilding begins the moment you stop defining yourself by your past. My personal rebuild framework. When I look back now, I realize something. My transformation didn't happen because of one breakthrough. It happened because of structure, a framework, a process, a blueprint, safety, skills, income, community, identity. Again and again, small steps repeated consistently. And over time, those small steps created a completely different life. Not because I became fearless, but because I kept building. Even when I was afraid, even when I doubted myself, even when progress felt slow, I kept building. And that's what I want for you too. Special bonus for the first two women. So before we finish, I want to offer something special. If today's message resonates with you, and you know you're ready to start rebuilding, the first two women who join through any of the following options: SMGB Academy, SMGB plus BTC bundle, SMGB X Time monthly membership, will receive a complimentary, personalized rebuild guide created around their specific situation, goals, challenges, and next steps. Not a generic PDF. A customized roadmap designed to help you identify your strongest next move. Because no two rebuilding journeys are identical. And sometimes what you need most is clarity, closing. If today's episode helped you, please let me know in the comments. And if you haven't watched episode 1 yet, Why Healing Alone Isn't Enough, make sure you watch it next on my YouTube channel because it provides the foundation for everything we discussed today. And in episode 3, I'm going to share my personal story, my decisions that changed everything, what I would do differently today, and the lessons I learned while starting over. Because change doesn't begin when you leave. Change begins when you stop waiting. Until then, remember, you do not need perfect psychology. You do not need perfect confidence. You do not need perfect timing. You simply need to take the next step. One step, one decision, one action, one day at a time. And that is how a new life begins. I'm Anastasia Georgouli. This is Light Within, and I'll see you in episode 3. Thank you.